Ladies and gentlemen, uh, I want to make this video because what I'm doing now, I'm forced to think back into the 1950s and 60s and 70s of what I used to do, as my main interest. And so I might have a little glitch, like I might say, from a little bit of energy, you get an enormous amount of mass. Well, obviously, I've already said that. Uh, from a small amount of mass, you can obtain enormous energy. And this is put forth in writing. Oh, there's an Einstein letter to Roosevelt. But when you say, oh, in a letter that about a famous quotation of a little bit of mass, a small amount of mass makes an enormous amount of energy, and you can calculate that by E equals mc squared. Oh, Einstein. No. It's Olinto de Preto, 2 years before Einstein. And Einstein stole it from him. You understand? Now, where we get to where I didn't have the time or interest after I conferred with him in 1955. And by 1957, I definitely, as soon as I say Einstein, just didn't have the time to even listen to it. Rational man will put forward the rational solution, and it'll be valid and hold, not some schematic mathematical schema that represents something. So I'm going to obtain Poincare's original work and then compare Einstein's representation, in my opinion, and compare them. And then that's as far as relativity. Now, as far as the field equations, Poincare was far and above what Einstein could do in mathematical physics, and especially in mathematics. And I'm going to get Poincare's original field equations and get Einstein's field equations and compare them and see who did what, when, where, why, and how. Now, this is on a limited time and expenses because my main interest is not science anymore. It became too political nonsense and hype. And they say, well, you're anti-Semitic. No, I think they're anti-Christ. They won't accept Christ. I have a Jewish brother-in-law, great gentleman. Some of my friends are Jewish. I have no, I don't go by any race, color, or creed, and so forth. I go by the truth. And the truth is that mathematics, using a mathematical schema, mathematics is an abstract, understand that, mathematics is an abstract discipline. Physics is reality. You can see, touch, measure our physical universe. It used to be called natural philosophy. They think of what our nature was. And then by 1900, they say, well, it's physics. All right, fine. Physics is physical. Mathematics is abstract. Now, in his field equations, he says, well, it's the same here as anywhere in the universe. Sort of why his science, especially his inertial science. You see, I put forward laser science. Called it LER. Lightification reinforced electromagnetic radiation. Pronounced LER as teacher. I would teach them this ultra modern science of the 21st plus century. Now, he says you have, say, a planet, and out in its field, galactic, gravitational field, he has these field equations. And this is what really is and how to solve. It's representative. No. But if you take the planet away, what do you have? And what are you doing with these field equations regarding that planet in that field? Nothing. Do you understand? It's like I say, you cannot change. And it was Galileo. Galileo, I've studied every scientist, what they did and how they did it and why, and their thinking. Galileo would put forward a definition that holds, and that is gravity is gravity. A force is a force. Mass is mass. Velocity is a distance per unit of time. They all say, oh, Newton's laws, Newton laws. No, I have proof that Newton was a made fellow. All countries try to make their fellow the smartest. And they took this sophomore and an apple fell on his head, and all of a sudden he becomes so smart. He knows all of the math and everything as in his sophomore year, and writes a book in Latin, expert Latin, that I have proof that there's no way in the world he could have wrote that book. It was written by somebody else because he did not have that expertise in Latin. Do you understand? Now, I don't want to get to about Newton, but Newton gave up science. Yeah, they don't say that. Newton left science because he wanted to make money. He got so, look, yeah, all right, you fellas I've done something, I've made money now. You're kind of like limiting me, and I want to make money. And how did he do it? He became a debt collector. Now, what kind of a scientist leaves science, become a debt collector, in which some of the people that he brought in got hung because they owed money or were sent in jail? That is the Newton, they say. Newton laws. No, they're Galileo's 3 laws and of inertia. He says you take, and something's at rest, it remains at rest. And if it's in motion, it'll stay in motion in a straight line unless acted upon by an external force. So if you bounce a ball, it will continue unless acted upon by an external force. What's the external force? Gravity. Einstein now has his inertial science, in which he said space, which he said is a void. Space is a void. There's nothing in it. Remember, you take the planet away and there's nothing. There's a void, there's nothing. And now in this nothing, all of a sudden, he now gets curved space, warped space. What is there, Einstein, that all of a sudden now you take and warp it? That it makes like a valley. And it isn't like Galileo says, that gravity is a force of attraction. It's like Einstein now says it's his inertial science, in which gravity is just, it goes on this like least resistance and this valley in space, and that is gravity. And gravity is a singular event in his inertial science. Say what? I just proved about the planet and a field. I repeat that. Now I'm doing this from memory of at least 40 years ago. He says that in this inertial science philosophy of his, you got to think irrationally to get the answer of this universe. That you have this warp space in like the least resistance path. Gravity is a singular event of his inertial science. It's Einstein's inertia now. Not science's inertia, it's Einstein's inertia. He says that gravity is a singular event within this inertial science of his. We have an intergalactic forces. We have a galactic universe, intergalactic forces that have fields. You cannot say that gravity is something other than gravity, and especially say that now it's a singular event. This is general theory of relativity, from what I recall. You know, I could hardly finish reading his absurd, irrational nonsense. Oh. I made notes. There was something else I wanted to say. Well, I worked on the rubidium frequency standard. And that is, they use scintillator counters. And you get these hyperfine lines. So time is an increment of duration. You say space-time, space-time. No, space is a distance. I don't care what Einstein or anybody says, space is a distance. You cannot change that and mix it and say that space is time and time is space. With an A and B requires a certain time. You can say, oh, between A and B, it's a second. But you're saying the duration of traveling from A to B. But A to B is a distance and time is an increment of duration. So I don't say this smart, oh, wow, like Einstein, space-time, saying, oh, gee, you're saying space-time. Space is space, time is time. Gravity is gravity. And yours truly says the truth. I did latification of electromagnetic radiation. I'll get to that. My laser science. And those who support me, because I must get my constitutional right of honors and reasonable compensation. Thank you.